GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network. The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode 111.
Episode 111. 3 ones, baby. Triple ones. Hey, if you like the one so much, we'll give you 2 more ones. Episode 111. Yeah.
It's the Buffalo Bills at the Baltimore Ravens. I am Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD, joined by my co-host at I am JC Money. We're back. Myself and John back on the podcast this week after my quick self-chat in Delaware. We're back home. We're back on familiar territory, and we brought a fun little cold with us home because the people we were staying with had an illness, and they thought that it was over, and it was not over, and now we have it. So beautiful.
Oh, well, I thought you were going for your best Barry White or Luis Perez impersonation when we started talking there, but no, it's cold. You got a cold.
Yeah, so I'm not really, like, the only thing I notice is that my voice is just a little deeper. Everything else I feel fine though. Got a couple coughs here or there. Wife is kind of sick, and Evelyn has had, within the last week, she's been diagnosed with pink eye, an ear infection, and a cold.
Jesus, man, that's rough.
Yeah, so like,
I mean, that's rough for an adult to have that all at the same time, let alone a baby.
So like day one was the pink eye because her eyes were goopy, but they weren't pink. Day two, it was an ear infection because she was like folding her ears in half like a tortilla. And then they also said that she has a pretty nasty cold, which is cool as well. But she's getting better.
All right,
but anyways,
well, that's good to hear.
I appreciate that. Speaking about getting better. The Buffalo Bills, man, holy hell and a half. What a game that was last Sunday. They complete the impressive second half comeback and defeat the Baltimore Ravens 23-20. Now, John, coming into this game, because we didn't have a chance to talk about the Dolphins, so in 5 words or less, give me your thoughts on the Bills' loss to the Dolphins before we get started on this week's game.
Tua should not have been put back in that game.
That's fair. And honestly, if Tua didn't get put back, the Bills probably would have won. But Tua being knocked out in that game and then getting knocked out against Cincinnati, unfortunately, it looked very rough, but I think it's been sparking a necessary conversation that we hoped would have happened without a very severe head injury. Because again, we've seen concussions before. We all know what a concussion looks like, but to see a player physically fencing, as they call it, that's the medical term. That's not, just a made up term. That's when holy crap, something's got to be done. And here's the thing, to the NFL's credit, when they mess up, they overreact like a clingy boyfriend or clingy girlfriend, where it's like, are you okay? How are you doing? Is everything okay? I saw you act a little weird there. Are you okay? So like last night they were showing the running back for the Colts, their backup running back, Hines, I believe it was. He got hit hard, came up slow, immediately pulled him off, concussion test, he's out for the game. Russell Wilson got smoked on an interception return, and they had 6 or 7 people huddled around a TV watching his movements in slow motion like the Zapruder film to make sure that he could rule out a concussion. So again, the NFL is overreacting, but that's good in this situation. An overreaction is better than no reaction at all. I don't know if you were going to say something or not.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not breaking down the wall here. I'm getting things sent to me at the same non-sports related things sent to me at the same time.
If you're getting boobs sent to you, we can pause.
It is definitely not that. But I mean, to your point about the NFL and them taking the steps that they are when something happens, it's about time that they do things like that, and it's great. We'll give them the kudos now. I wish this had been standard practice for many, many years,
and it should have
beforehand. It really should have been. Again, Tua should not have been out in that game. He should not have been out on the following Thursday night, and now because of that, he's out this week against the Jets. Rightfully so. He should be. I think that that's really my takeaway from that Bills game against the Dolphins. Honestly,
anytime we can
have been out there.
Anytime we can get Christopher Nowinski on our television talking about concussions, and we can say former WWE superstar Christopher Nowinski, it's a good day.
Yeah, well, and when he is out there like, yo,
screwed up.
What are y'all doing? Like, you screwed up. Like that
every time there's a concussion,
educated, he's extremely smart and he's extremely passionate about concussions, given his history with them in his limited time in pro wrestling. Like he had one that scared him enough to be like, yo, nope.
So every time a concussion happens, they go to the same concussion doctor, the one who was in the movie, the one who discovered CTE. I think I know his first name is Bennett, but I think his last name is like Omalu or something like that. I can't never remember. I'm bad with names.
Yes.
But they always go to him. But then when you get Christopher Nowinski, you're like, okay, this is very, very serious. But
absolutely,
again, worried about the Bills hangover from the tough loss to Miami, and John, it was real. They had the Buffalo Bills come out, mental mistakes, unforced errors. It looked very sloppy. But once the mental mistakes subsided and the Bills dug their heels in, the entire team settled down, really. I mean, and also, I want to mention, too, because we've talked about this on past podcasts, don't look now, John, but the Bills finally won a close game, and we can put that narrative to bed. Furthermore, Buffalo improves to 33-23 under Sean McDermott in games that were within one score in the fourth quarter. Buffalo's .589 win percentage in those games ranks 7th in the National Football League since 2017. So again, Buffalo snaps the streak. I think I talk about it a little later in the podcast. But again, Buffalo snaps the streak and we move forward from there. And it was an ugly game in the first half. Second half, absolutely breathtaking to see this team play so sound and so well. But one thing I want to point out, though, we've talked about superstitions here before in a podcast, John, and I'm not superstitious. I'm only a little stitious, to quote the great fake Michael Scott. I was in Delaware 2 weekends ago watching the Bills game. The Bills lost. I was wearing my Josh Allen jersey. Didn't get the chance to wash it. Come home, throw the jersey on for the game on Sunday. The Bills come out and they're getting smacked out the gate. Like they were not with it. They were not there, as we saw. Before half, I popped off the jersey. Still got my Bills shirt on under it. Popped off the jersey. All of a sudden, game turns around. Again, not saying I'm superstitious, just a little stitious. Weird how that works out. It's very strange. But for those listening at home that want to know, the jersey has been washed. The jersey is ready for Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But very strange that happened that way.
I mean, if you're going to be a little stitious, I guess, that works out for you. Really, what it just looked like to me, honestly, was, the Buffalo Bills were playing a really good team. And, the Baltimore Ravens arguably can compete with anybody. And they showed that. The weather was a little bit of a factor, too. I will have to, just based on when I'm watching, I was flipping back and forth. We've seen that in a few other games, but everything I've been able to see, you could tell the weather was a slight factor, but it wasn't anything mercifully that the Bills couldn't overcome. I mean, they play in Western New York, so they should be used to challenging elements. And Bills fans that use that as an excuse, I'm not hearing it.
First off, I have to apologize because I feel like with my brain being a little cloudy here, it's difficult for my anticipatory skills are just terrible, I guess. So I keep trying to cut you off. I apologize for that. But
how dare you?
I just wanted to say it now because it's already driving me crazy. We've been doing the podcast for like 3 minutes. But looking at it, and it's one thing I'll take from Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel. It's good to see the Bills have a little adversity and be able to respond, because again, you want your football team, your baseball team, your work life, your personal life, anything. You want a little adversity when it may not mean as much. Right. So that way, when it means much, then okay, we've been through this before. We know what to do. It's kind of like back when Josh Allen was that scared little golden retriever and you put him in a stadium with more than 50,000 people and you swear to God he's never played football in his life.
Right, yes.
You have a few of those moments, you get spooked, you understand, okay, this is what it's going to feel like, this is what it's going to be. So again, that's what we saw on Sunday. The Bills chilled out, calmed down, dug in their heels, and went to work.
Right, absolutely. And it's great that you actually mentioned that point, because it is a very valid example with regards to Josh Allen and how he had to really be agile, not just on the field, but off of it as well, to his game, and understand the situations. And the one thing I always preach it to, anybody that I'm leading, whether it's backstage wrestling, locker room, or in the shoot, 9 to 5 life, it's with repetition comes habit. And I think that those little things that Josh Allen used to, he had those blocks, those like mental blocks with, as those were repetitively happening and he was facing those, he learned how to adapt, and he learned how to be agile and deal with these things, deal with these challenges, adjust for them, accommodate for them. And you got to see it firsthand, especially after halftime, when they put up the 10 to tie the game and just kind of kept on them, and Josh Allen was cool hand Luke and took the game into his hands. And I mean, this team, it's a great thing, but it's also a terrible thing too, when you can say that the offense, the lifeblood is through one specific person, because God forbid something happens to Josh Allen. I don't know how this Buffalo Bills team would have responded to this adversity that they faced against the Baltimore Ravens. And, Allen played MVP ball, put the team on his shoulders, did what he had to do, and the Bills came up with the W as a result.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun to watch. Very frustrating in the first half, because you're like, this is not the Buffalo Bills team I know. But then as time went on, you're like, okay, this is it. But hey, a cool stat.
Right, but here's the thing though. It's not like they were playing the Colts or the Broncos. They're playing the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, who is going to get paid one way or the other after this season.
That's a good point. It's they're playing a team that will make them pay for making those unforced mental mistakes and those unforced mental errors. Mm-hmm. Not like Thursday Night Football, where you saw the Colts and the Broncos seeing who can punt the ball the furthest for 4 quarters and overtime.
Right. Exactly.
It's a team where, again, if you throw an interception, Lamar Jackson is going to make you pay. If you go 3 and out, Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense is going to make you pay. The defense, not so much. That defense definitely does not look like a Baltimore Raven defense, but I guess when your defense has had the same identity for almost 25 years now, that's pretty impressive. Right, but things might have to change a little in Baltimore, because that, again, they blew a big lead against the Dolphins and they blow a big lead against the Bills. And again, these teams just may be good. The Ravens may not be great. But at the end of the day, if your identity is your defense and it sucks, you're going to be in trouble.
I feel like Lamar Jackson is going to be the NFL's version to Aaron Judge this year. A dude that's betting on himself, and depending on how well he does and the team does is going to depend on how financially taken care of he's going to be in the off season.
I would agree with that.
So it's interesting to see, like, the Baltimore Ravens, they did the thing because Lamar Jackson was doing his thing. He just wasn't doing it the whole game. And then Josh Allen woke up, and that defense, to your point, same identity for 25 years, but they're not the same that they were. And Josh Allen saw that, adapted, and did what he had to do.
Absolutely. Hey, before we start our 3 big things, we've got a very cool stat here from Alec White. It's at Alec_White_22. He's a Buffalo Bills content coordinator. This marks the first game on Sunday versus the Ravens, the first time in franchise history the Bills have won a game where they never led until the final play of regulation. Pretty cool.
You know what? I actually thought about that, because what was it? I think Ian Eagle was on the call, and I believe he said something. Whomever was on the call for the game said that, made mention of that, like, right afterward. Or maybe it was Chris Boomer on NFL Primetime. But either way, I did hear that, and I was actually blown away by that, because, I would say we not necessarily took for granted, but I think we got used to the fact that the Buffalo Bills could spot a team 14 to 20 points and then come back and then come out of nowhere and score, drop 35 on them. And
Absolutely.
that's the ball game, right? We got so used to seeing that hearing a stat like that the Bills had been behind or hadn't led the game until the final play of the game is one of those stats that'll blow you away.
So moving on to our three big things here, brought to you by puckluck.com. The Buffalo Sabres are, I think, about a week away from starting their National Hockey League season, the 2022-23 season. So make sure you check out puckluck.com. They bring us the three big things this week, your one-stop resource for all your National Hockey League sports betting action. Puckluck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, though, puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League. It's teams with the NHLPA. Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly.
Can I ask you a quick question, veering from the subject really quickly?
Sure.
What do you think about the Sabres this year?
They're going to be better, but they're not going to be as good as people want them to be yet, but they will be better.
Okay, that's fair.
I hate to paint with such a broad brush, but
I just, because I've been hearing all off season about how the Sabres are, going to turn it around. They're going to be they're worst to first, all that stuff.
I think a lot of it's going to end up being some growing pains because they need to figure out who's their number one center. Can Tage Thompson continue to do what he did last year? Who's going to fill what role? So then that way this next offseason, they can then attack it hard because I think they're probably still at least a year away from contending for a playoff spot, because last year you look at it, all the teams in the Eastern Conference, all the good teams had over 100 points. Like Buffalo's not ready to make that jump yet.
All right. That's fair. We can talk about that another time. I was genuinely very curious. And with hockey season coming up, I was like, you know what?
No problem.
The only Sabres opinion I'm going to trust is the one from the podcast that I trust.
I appreciate that. Hey,
All
by the
right,
way, real quick tip. You live in Rochester or Buffalo, get out to some Amerks games. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yes, sir. I'm going to at least like 3 or 4 of them this year for sure.
We'll have to do a BLTD night at the game. But running down the offensive stats here, our first of the three big things each and every single week, we talk about Josh Allen. And really, he was the only person on offense to talk about. Do apologize. This is going to be a quick segment here. Josh Allen, 19 of 36 passing, 213 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception with 11 rushes for 70 yards and a touchdown. Josh Allen tied Peyton Manning, 147 total touchdowns in his for fourth most total touchdowns all time in a player's first 5 seasons. It's Allen's 22nd game with both a passing and rushing touchdown. Allen has 10 plus touchdown passes to 4 different active receivers. Diggs 22, Knox 14, Davis 12, and Mckenzie 10. He's only one of 2 NFL quarterbacks, the other being Green Bay's Aaron Rodgers, with 10 plus passing touchdowns to current teammates. Josh Allen finished the game with 15,341 career passing yards, passing Jack Kemp, who had 15,134 passing yards for third most all-time in team history. Allen now trails only Joe Ferguson at 27,590 and Jim Kelly, 35,467 passing yards in franchise history. So again, Allen continues to impress. He continues to climb up the charts. May not have had a super sexy day offensively, but guess what? Did enough to get the job done.
You know what? And at the end of the day, football is a team sport. Even if you don't have the sexy stats every single game, if your team wins, that's really what's the most important. End of the day, the goal is a championship. The goal is a Super Bowl. And, I would take, and I think Josh Allen would say this, and any elite NFL football player would say this, I would trade in all the MVP awards. I would trade in, the good stats for a chip. Like,
absolutely.
And the great ones say that. And so that's ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what you want.
So the defense was the linchpin to this victory. I mean, yes, the offense obviously came back and scored points, but the defense was able to, as we mentioned a couple times already, dig their heels in. So moving on to our second of the 3 big things, wrapping up the defense. First off, safety Jordan Poyer returned to the lineup with 2 huge interceptions. He leads the National Football League heading into this week with 4 picks in 3 games. He's the first Buffalo Bills player since Henry Jones in 1992 with 4 picks in his first 3 games, and the first NFL player with 4 picks in his first 3 games since Marcus Peters, then with the Chiefs, now with the Ravens, did it in 2016. Poyer has tallied an interception in each game played. He had 5 picks last season in 16 games. Also, Buffalo has recorded a victory in 10 of 12 games that Poyer has recorded a pick. And also for his troubles, Jordan Poyer was named the AFC Defensive Player of the Week. And one cool thing to point out, John, Jordan Poyer was on the Pat McAfee show this past week. Pat McAfee said, look, if you get me 13 picks this season, I will donate $1 million to a charity of your choice. So pretty cool that Bills players continue to get this kind of publicity, but also very cool on Pat McAfee to offer that. I don't know if we'll see it, but dude, Jordan Poyer is, again, we talk about the Aaron Judge comparison.
Yep.
Jordan Poyer is living his best Aaron Judge life right now, saying, you know what?
Absolutely.
Bills don't want to resign me yet. I'm going to go find someone else to pay me because I'm going to go out and ball out. Exactly.
He's playing big. He's playing big boy ball, Ryan. It's going to be very, very interesting to see once the season is over what his story ends up being.
Well, the one thing too, real quick, is you look at the loss of Micah Hyde. So now the spotlight is completely on Jordan Poyer. I wonder if that might force the Bills' hand, because obviously we know, we've talked about it. At some point, you have to be able to transition out of giving all your good players big long-term deals. You have to have those young kids come in and fill holes at a cheaper clip, so that way you're able to pay your talented players, which again, I know Jordan Poyer is a talent, but you don't want to pay aging players because obviously it ends up turning out mostly bad. It's a mostly bad time for everybody involved except for the guy getting the money. But knowing that Micah Hyde is coming off of a herniated disc in his neck, which I believe is what was reported, maybe you decide to keep Poyer a little longer, but then again, you've got younger players who are stepping up and doing their thing. But again, that's a conversation for many months from now. Just enjoying and basking in the glory that is Jordan Poyer playing his ass off. Now, linebacker Matt Milano, he has been a revelation this year. And we say this, John, already knowing how good Matt Milano has been for the Buffalo Bills, how underrated he is in the league, despite the fact that he's got a nice big contract. He's been all over the field, and Sunday, no different. Had a career high with 13 total tackles. He had 10 solo tackles, which is a new career high, and 2 tackles for loss. Linebacker Von Miller had a sack. Defensive end Greg Russo, defensive tackle Daquan Jones, half a sack each. Greg Russo becomes Buffalo's first player to have a 4-game sack streak since Lorenzo Alexander had a 7-game sack streak in 2016. Here's something for you. The Bills, we talked about Lamar Jackson having a killer season. The Bills held him to 144 yards passing and 1 passing touchdown, along with 73 rushing yards, only 73 rushing yards. We say that because Lamar Jackson came in with a 2-game streak of 100-plus rushing yards. Now, another fun stat for you, shockingly. The Buffalo Bills allowed 296 total yards to Baltimore, which gives Buffalo 8 straight games allowing 300 yards or 300 total yards or fewer, which ties the team record set in an 8-game stretch between the 1999 and 2000 seasons. Also, the Bills have only allowed 7 points in all of the second half this season of each game combined. That marks the fewest second half points allowed by a team through 4 games since the Denver Broncos in 2009, who also only allowed 7 points. And again, we've got a fun blitz stat for you from at Williamson NFL on Twitter. The 49ers are the only defense that create a sack at a higher percentage of opposing dropbacks than the Bills. Buffalo is sacking opposing quarterbacks on 10.2 of their passing attempts. The Bills have achieved this despite blitzing just 8.8% of the time, the lowest blitz rate in the National Football League. So again, the Buffalo Bills are continuing to get natural pressure on quarterbacks because they are so deep on the defensive end, the defensive line, and at linebacker, they are able to make the pressure happen without having to force a situation, which is absolutely incredible and speaks very highly to the system that Leslie Frazier has on the defensive side of things in Buffalo.
Absolutely. If Leslie Frazier is not a head coach again next year, I will be incredibly shocked. Well, the things that he's done to this Buffalo Bills defense and the identity that he's given it is just unbelievable. This is one of the all-time defenses in Buffalo Bills history. And then when adding Von Miller, we had talked about this a few weeks back, how important that was to the nucleus of this defense. It's showing every day, every game. This squad is for real. This squad is legit. Like when you're putting up numbers like that and you are low, you have the lowest blitz rate, but you're still getting to the opposing quarterback and putting the pressure on there. that says a whole hell of a lot. So,
well, that's the one thing you say too is like, okay, they were the number one defense last year. How can they get better? And these are the kind of things you get better at. Well, yeah, they were the number one defense, but they couldn't get to the quarterback. Now they're the number one defense and can get to the quarterback, and they're doing it naturally. They're not blitzing, because again, you see quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, a guy you're going to have to get through if you want to get to the Super Bowl, to even have the chance to win a championship. He eats blitzing alive. Like he loves to be blitzed because he plays his best football under pressure. Because again, he can roll out, he can run, he can do whatever it takes to get to that touchdown, to get those points on the board. So you can't blitz him. But if you're getting natural pressure on him, that's a different story, as we've seen in the Super Bowl with the Chiefs and Buccaneers. Again, getting natural pressure on the quarterback, it messes him up, and you're good to go from there. So again, you say to yourself, how can this get better? There you go. The thing is, too, with Leslie Frazier is you wonder if, yes, it does pay a lot to be a head coach, but I really think we're reaching that territory right now with the Buffalo Bills where coaches might start to not necessarily opt out, but they might say, like, look, there's a real good thing going on here. I'm sticking around for a little while longer to see if we can do something. Now, granted, if the Bills win the Super Bowl, I expect a purge of all purges when it comes to head coaches.
Yeah. Like we said last week, when comparing it to like the Seattle Seahawks when they were on their run with the Legion during the Legion of Boom era, when they won that Super Bowl, man, were they poached. And that's what happens is usually whenever there's a good team, a good solid team with a good solid system in place, that year over year just either gets better or really just gets better every year. You're gonna have people that are dipping in and trying to give opportunities to them. I mean, look at the Giants with Brian Daboll. He's there now, and now the big thing is about how big a set of stones he has over there in New York. It's just going to be. It's just going to be following suit there, especially if the Bills do make it to the Super Bowl and win it.
Well, you see how well like the Buffalo Bills wide receivers have played. Maybe the wide receivers coach is ready to move up to be an offensive coordinator, or he was a name that was the name was rumored throughout the offseason. Or you've got Ken Dorsey, who only been an offensive coordinator for 1 year, but obviously he's already well regarded because not only did he play in the league, but the work he's done in Buffalo so far with Josh Allen has been great. And maybe he gets a head coaching opportunity. You've got Leslie Frazier, obviously. You've got defensive line coaches. You've got linebacker coaches. You've got cornerback coaches where you say, look, I love how this specific position or this specific group plays. So if a guy like Leslie Frazier leaves, you take, hey, I'm going to take the DB coach and he's going to be my defensive coordinator. Or I'm going to take the wide receivers coach is going to be my offensive coordinator or something like that. So again, that's where the finesse comes in. That's why you have a good system built. But again, this is what's going to happen. Good teams get poached. And so far, this Buffalo Bills team, like, they've got great coaching. They've got great players. Everything across the board is fantastic. And it's really only going to get better from here.
Absolutely. 100% agree. And the transition of Daboll to Dorsey proves that.
Absolutely. And I was just going to randomly throw a commercial in there, but I'm going to try to be a little more official with it, John, here. So
go ahead.
We're going to take the third of the three big things and look ahead, talk about some hand sizes and all sorts of weird stuff, I guess, here on Trust the Podcast. So take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more Trust the Podcast right after this here on the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And we're back here on Trust the Podcast. The third of the three big things, more on the victory. It wouldn't be a podcast, John, without me throwing some stats your way. And
stat time.
I've got a couple good ones for you. First off,
all right.
The one thing I want to mention, first thing I want to mention here, going for it late. Baltimore head coach John Harbaugh under fire this week for going for it late on the fourth down with Baltimore deep in Buffalo's territory. The play led to the second of Jordan Poyer's interceptions, reminiscent of the Monday Night Football loss to Tennessee last season, where Josh Allen went for it and slipped and fell 1 yard short of a touchdown. To me, it really seems like John Harbaugh admitting he knows the defense can't be trusted, in the sense of if they get a touchdown, Buffalo has little amount of time to go back and get a touchdown. Or if they kick a field goal, Buffalo can either go get a touchdown and win or tie it. I think personally, John, I'd like to get your opinion really quick on this one. But I think John Harbaugh made the right choice. He made the right call. You have an MVP quarterback, one of the best in the league, put the game in his hands. It's much like a couple weeks ago when we saw the Denver Broncos say, we're taking the ball out of Russell's hand. We're going to kick a 64-yard field goal. Like you pay these players to put the ball in their hands when the game's on the line. And that's what Baltimore did. And the Ravens fans aren't happy about it, but do you think they'd be happy if they kicked a field goal and then the Bills went down and scored a touchdown? You'd be like, why didn't you go for a touchdown? So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You could be an armchair head coach all you want. You can coach as many undefeated teams in Madden as you want. The reality of the situation is when you're a head coach in the National Football League, your job is to win games, no matter by any means necessary. It's not to play, to the hardcore fans and cater to what they might do in a situation. To your point, they have Lamar Jackson. I would take that chance, knowing that I have Lamar Jackson and his skill set, his unique skill set that could make this happen. And then also keeping in mind that on the other side of the ball, you have Josh Allen. It's not like you have Matt Ryan, who's on the tail end of his career, or Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold or something. You have Josh Allen. A guy is an MVP consideration every year. The guy that this Buffalo Bills team is built around. The guy that moved this offense and helped lead this comeback and is riding a hot hand going in there. You're going to want to do everything you possibly can to either make sure he doesn't get back on the field, or you make sure that you make his efforts when he gets back on the field that much harder. So yeah, I agree completely with what John Harbaugh did, and I don't think anybody that knows football with anything more than anybody that's been a football fan for longer than maybe 5 or 6 years would argue that method he took.
Well, when we say we play the game too, what do we do, John? We
play to win the game.
Precisely. Every time. Every single time you're out there. And that's what John Harbaugh did. End of story.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I've been waiting to drop this one. It was 20-3, John. It was 20-3.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo's largest comeback since they raced a 21-point deficit to beat the Patriots on September 25th, 2011. AWS's Next Gen Stats reported Buffalo had a win probability of only 11% when they were down 20-3 in the second quarter. Now, also,
I'll never forget that game on September 25th, 2011, because I was wrestling at a bar setting, and it's for those that are local to me in Rochester, Pineapple Jacks. So they're the way that was set up is they have the bar side where you were able to smoke cigars or whatever. It was all kind of glassed in, and then they have this like stage behind it where they would have concerts or whatever. We had wrestling show there. It was actually the show that I wrestled Gilbert at. The show itself.
Gilbert.
Yeah. Yes, I beat Gilbert. So the show was going on as the comeback was happening. The fans that were in attendance for the show could hear the bar going just like absolutely bonkers as the Bills were coming back. So the fans were turning their attention more to the game or what was happening instead of, what was going on in the ring, unfortunately, for the folks that were in the ring at that time. We took we took intermission just a little bit earlier for that show because of what was happening that game. And literally, you had all the wrestlers that were Bills fans, or football fans for that matter, were kind of like huddled around the gorilla area, the gorilla position, where we could actually see right into the bar, and we're watching the games. And when the Bills won, and that whole place went nuts behind the scenes at the bar. Folks that were sitting there, it was a great freaking vibe, man. Never forget that game.
It's like when the year that the Bills beat the Packers and they weren't supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Handful of years ago. I don't even remember when that was at this point.
Yeah, I don't either.
It was I think it was December-ish because oh boy, it's sometime in December because I remember that I think it was Delilah's birthday. Yeah. It was 2014. That would make sense. Yeah. So the Bills beat the Packers 2014.
Yeah, okay. I do remember that now.
21-13. And I remember because it was Kyle Orton. Remember him? Wow, what a name.
Oh man, I remember the Orton era.
Yeah. Holy crap. Let's see. Oh, Micah Hyde was still a Packer at the time. Okay, so yeah, that was a situation where we were watching the game at a bowling alley, if I remember correctly, and I could not get my eyes off the TV because I'm like, this legitimately, even though the Bills were 7-6 at the time, 8-6 after the game, you're like, this is not supposed to be happening.
Right.
So again, we've come very far.
When our teams respectively, and I hate to keep saying, referencing my fandom as a New York Jets fan, but it speaks now. When your team is down in the dumpster, so to speak, the proverbial dumpster, going through a long drought for such a long period of time, when you get these games that you're like, oh crap, this is going to happen, like you become so emotionally invested in it that you know nothing else really seemingly matters at that point in time because it's a rarity. Last Sunday, for example, not just while I'm flipping back, I'm watching this Bills game here, but I'm also flipping over to the Jets and the Steelers and watching that kind of unfold the way it did. And it was so uncommon for the New York Jets to head into October with 2 wins that it was it was mind blowing to me. And now that you mentioned, we mentioned the September 25th, 2011 game with New England, the comeback there, and then the 2014 game with the Packers, the comeback there. That was at the height of the drought there. And so I could absolutely relate to how you felt at that time with that game.
It was a lot of fun at the time. It still is a lot of fun to watch the Buffalo Bills. There were some streaks broken on Sunday. First off, rest in peace. Buffalo's 20 straight regular season victories by 10-plus points has fallen, but Buffalo snapped a 7-game losing streak in games decided by 7 points or fewer. It was the first regular season win by less than 10 points since November 1st, 2020, versus the New England Patriots. Kicker Tyler Bass, first game-winning kick. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
It's been a minute.
No doubt.
Either they lose by a lot, or they lose by a little, or win by a lot.
Win by a lot, lose by a little. I mean, you know what? I take those odds.
That's fair. I don't disagree. Yeah. Kicker Tyler Bass, first game-winning kick, which also marks the Bills' first win on a game's final play since October 7th, 2018. Stephen Hauschka had a game-winning field goal versus Tennessee. It's Buffalo's first road victory on a game's final play since September 7th, 2014, a Dan Carpenter game-winning field goal at Chicago. Tyler Bass recorded 11 points in the game, bringing his career total to 310 points. Bass now ranks 9th all-time among Bills' career scoring leaders, passing kicker Stephen Hauschka, who had 303 points with the Bills. At Jay Skursky, this is a good one too, John, before we move to our look ahead. The Bills have punted just 7 times this season. Only 2 of those have been returned, and 2 of those 2 attempts have gained 0 yards. So 4 games and not a single yard allowed on punt returns. Good job, Buffalo.
It's unbelievable. Again, Ryan, best in the business with these stats and finding them, man.
Thank you. After watching Thursday Night Football, I'm sure that Sam Martin is glad he did not take that pay cut in Denver.
I bet. I wonder what obscure stats for that game we could find. I'm sure there's got to be a litany of them.
Yeah. Russell Wilson probably said, let's ride more times than he completed a pass, something like that. Our look ahead. Injury news. First off, last week, Buffalo signed cornerback Xavier Rhodes. As mentioned, Rhodes injured. They signed him as mentioned. I'm sorry. Rhodes injured his hamstring in practice and was placed on the practice squad equivalent of the injured reserve. Rhodes will miss 4 weeks. That leads to speculation he might not end up playing for the Bills simply because cornerback Christian Benford and cornerback Tre'Davious White are likely due back before Rhodes is eligible to return. Following the victory Sunday in Baltimore, Jamison Crowder, wide receiver, was spotted in a boot and on crutches. Come to find out, confirmed originally by NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, Crowder is out for the season with a broken ankle. David Chow at Pro Football Doc says it looks like it's a severe high ankle sprain, ligament damage with associated fibula fracture, as discussed in the game, would mean surgery and his season over.
That's awful. That is awful to hear. You know what? I loved Jamison Crowder as a New York Jet. He did everything right by the team that he was on. You know, given the hand that he was dealt there, he was a pro's pro. He was a player's player. You know, it just sucks to hear when a good one goes down like that. So hopefully the surgery is good for him and he bounces back and we can see him back on the field next season doing good things.
And it definitely felt like he started to slowly hit his stride with the Bills, which was great with all the injuries and all that. But next man up, that's how it always works. That's why you build deep teams in the offseason. But wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie left the game Sunday with a concussion. And according to the Bills injury report on Thursday, because I have not yet gotten Fridays here, it looks like he practiced limited. I believe he was still in a red jersey, but we'll see what his status was on Friday before we obviously figure out the game status here. Looking at the list of the rest of the players, Christian Benford still did not practice both days. Likely he's going to be out. Jamison Crowder obviously out. Gabe Davis, full participant. He'll likely play. Tremaine Edmonds, a big one, a DNP this week. I would presume that means he's not going to play. Dawson Knox, same thing, wrong side of questionable with a DNP. That's one of my favorite sayings lately, the wrong side of questionable. DNP. Same with Jake Kumaro, DNP. So it looks like those two could be out this week. Cam Lewis, full participant, as mentioned. Isaiah McKenzie, limited. Mitch Morse, full participant on Thursday. Justin Murray, Ed Oliver, and Jordan Phillips, all limited. Jordan Poyer, also a DNP twice this week with a rib injury. I wonder if he's just resting and he'll play because, again, there's no need to push it, but we'll see how that works out. I'm interested to see what's going on with Ed Oliver, though, because he has been limited in practice, but he's been missing games since the first game of the season. I almost wonder if maybe he doesn't have like a high ankle sprain or something and he's trying to come back from it because of the amount of time he's missed, but we have no idea. We cannot confirm nor deny that. But either way, Bill's
speaking of somebody that's coming on the off of an ankle, it's working through an ankle injury right now. I mean, it happened in my last match was in June, and I still have not been cleared to compete in the ring yet. These things are tough to come back from. So
like they say with high ankle sprains or anything like that, you'd rather break the ankle because at least then you have a actual firm time frame.
Oh, I at this point now, speaking just solely for me, not as a football player, but as a professional wrestler, I wish my ankle was broken in June because I feel like I would be much farther along now in the recovery process than I currently am. Either way, like for me, it's closer to the end than the beginning, which is good. But these things can be very brutal and taxing, not just on the ankle and on the person itself, but like one's mind as well because of the complexities of these types of injuries.
A quick Google search, and again, I'm no doctor, but a quick Google search says a broken ankle, you can come back from it in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
High ankle sprains can be a month, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. Remember when Jack Eichel played for the Sabres, he had a high ankle sprain. He said it took him an entire year to come back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I believe it. LeBron James, when he had that high ankle sprain for the Lakers, I think 2 years ago or whatever, and he was out for 3 months, and people were like, whoa, you're supposed to be this? And it's like, no, dude, it's a high ankle sprain. Like, you can't you got to nurse those things. Like,
people don't realize that a high ankle sprain is, and again, we're just guessing here on Ed Oliver, but high ankle sprains, and it could be bone, it could be ligament, it could be it's a mixture of everything, which makes it kind of so nasty because it's not a complete break or tear. It's just kind of, well, this hurts, that hurts, this is okay, that's okay. So it's very difficult to put your finger on. But
well, hopefully whatever it is, it's nothing too horrendous. But at this point now, the questions are coming up, and we just hope he's okay.
Absolutely. Looking forward to having him back in the lineup. On Monday, Buffalo announced that they have signed defensive tackle Eli Ankou to their practice squad. Ankou spent the offseason with Buffalo, was released with an injury settlement as part of the original 53-man roster cutdown. After you have to be off of the roster for a certain amount of time. Once you have an injury settlement, then you can re-sign, which is what happened here. On Tuesday, Buffalo announced they have signed defensive tackle Justin Zimmer and cornerback Jordan Miller to the practice squad. Zimmer previously played with the Bills, as you may remember. It was the Patriots and Bills. Cam Newton was the quarterback. He was rushing in the game, and Zimmer came out of nowhere and punched the ball out. That was his big moment as a Buffalo Bill. And then Miller signed with Buffalo back in July, was cut in August. He has played for a few teams in the National Football League. Buffalo also subsequently announced they cut defensive tackle C.J. Brewer and defensive tackle Prince Emili from the practice squad. Prince Emili had a tip on Jordan Poyer's first interception, but struggled aside from that in the game on Sunday. But it can be a tough business. But speaking of tough business, we're moving over to Week 5. The Buffalo Bills versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, Sunday, October 8th at 1 p.m. on CBS. Tough business being confusion at quarterback. Pittsburgh pulled the trigger, benched Mitch Trubisky last week, played Kenny Pickett for the entire second half of the game versus the Jets. In the first half, Mitch Trubisky was 7 for 13, 84 yards and an interception with one rush for 1 yard, as mentioned in the first half. Trubisky 1-3 in his first 4 games, only a 59.5% completion percentage, has not really done a whole lot to jump off the page. It really seems to me, and this is my obviously unprofessional opinion, but to me, John, it seems like Mitchell Trubisky just does not trust himself or trust the plays that are being called. He seems very tentative, which would lead to the stat line that we're seeing, which leads us to Kenny Pickett. 10 for 13, 120 yards and 3 interceptions with 6 rushes for 16 yards and 2 rushing touches against the Jets in the second half. It was announced Pickett will start his first game on Sunday versus the Buffalo Bills, which talk about throwing him to the dogs. But
yeah, you are not kidding there. Like I guess when you think about it and you put it in perspective, getting at least some reps against a team like the New York Jets, even in defeat, to be able to come out and go 10 of 13 for 120 yards. We're not worried about the 3 interceptions now. You got to factor in his being a rookie, and that's his first real live NFL action there. But 6 rushes for the 2 touchdowns against the New York Jets. Like that's good to kind of get him, get the juices going and then have him take the first team reps all week. But you're not playing another defense like the New York Jets. You're playing the Buffalo Bills defense, who doesn't need to blitz you in order to pressure you. Good luck, kid.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting. This will show us too with the Buffalo Bills how that they can respond to not having much tape on a guy or a game plan where usually young players or young quarterbacks will come out and they play very well because again there's not much on them. And then the league starts to adjust, and then you go from there. But
can I ask what you think about what Tomlin did and by putting Kenny Pickett in? Do you think he pulled the trigger on it too soon?
I think so, but then again, at this point, it's not going. You can tell it's not going to get much better,
right? And you can't go back from that.
I almost wonder if maybe not. I can't imagine the Steelers ever getting rid of Mike Tomlin, but wondering if maybe this is like the easy way out to transition to a new version of the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I had mentioned to my dad after the game, I said, even though Ben Roethlisberger was a shell of his former self in the later years, Ben Roethlisberger's presence and his abilities still at an old age, I think it covered up a lot of issues that the Steelers had, a lot of cracks in the foundation. And now that you don't have that under center,
right,
it's like, oh, all of a sudden now they can play 8 men in the box and Najee Harris is not going to have a decent day. So now you have to get beat by Mitch Trubisky, who obviously is just not doing it, or beat by Kenny Pickett, who we haven't seen enough of. But having a player like a Ben Roethlisberger has really losing him has really hurt that team, obviously, but I think in more ways than one, just simply because now you're really relying on your defense to be perfect, and they're missing TJ Watt and other players are ineffective. Offensively, you can't get the ball to the wide receivers, and when you do, they might not be as effective, or your blocking is not good, or your running backs are not good, or whatever. But that's all front page because, at the end of the day, the most important player on offense, quarterback, is struggling.
Right, absolutely. And I always like to go to the ESPN matchup predictor, and 86 rather, if I can talk here, it's Friday, folks, 86.1% of fans that took this poll, according to ESPN's Power Football Index, has Buffalo in favor over Pittsburgh. Only 13.8% of the folks that took this survey elected for Pittsburgh, and I'm guessing it must be everybody that's on the Pittsburgh Steelers team right now. Probably bet on themselves there. But to your point about Roethlisberger, that's a great point to mention. Is that even though you knew he was at the tail end, he was at the end of his career, and he wasn't the Big Ben of 2004, 2005, 2009, 2012. He wasn't that. There was still the thought process that, at any given moment, maybe he could be, maybe he could have that small glim of light, that small fountain of youth moment where he's doing the things that he used to do when it mattered the most. And you just simply do not have that visual right now with Trubisky. And of course, with Pickett being an unknown right now, you don't have that optic either.
I actually just saw something here. One of my friends shared it. The Steelers have blitzed four times as often with TJ Watt out, and TJ Watt still averages more sacks than the rest of the defense. So again, what are you doing in Pittsburgh? Like it's the team that they were for the longest time. It's much like the Ravens. That identity is gone, and you're like, okay, so now what? What are you going to do now? But they're going all in on Kenny Pickett, and hey, Kenny Pickett, his number one attribute, small hands. The average hand size for the 39 quarterbacks taken in the first round from 2008 to 2020 is 9.7 inches. That's from tip of the thumb to tip of the pinky stretched out. Pickett's hands measure at 8.5 inches. That's the smallest in the league. Russell Wilson leads the NFL with hand measurement of 10.25 inches. Quarterback, Green Bay quarterback Aaron Rodgers and Buffalo's Josh Allen are tied for second with 10 1/8 inch hands from, again, thumb tip to pinky tip. Now, here's a fun stat we'll wrap up on, John.
Okay.
Per Adam Schefter on Twitter, the Steelers are a 14-point underdog in Buffalo. Pittsburgh is the only team since the 1970 AFL-NFL merger to never be at least a 14-point underdog via @MacNova. Pittsburgh's largest underdog role since the merger is plus 13.5 against Dallas in Super Bowl 30, or some of you may say Super Bowl XXX, when they lost by 10. So we're witnessing history.
Wow, that
attrition.
I did not even know that stat. But I mean, keep in mind there, Pittsburgh is the model of consistency through. So I feel like since 1970 they've only had like 3 coaches. And in fact, they have. It was Chuck Noll in the 1970 AFL merger. Chuck Noll was, I think, the coach of the Steelers then. When we talk about Dallas in Super Bowl 30, that was the Chin, Bill Cowher, and now we have Mike Tomlin. So that stat is a wow stat in multiple ways. I'm choosing to look at it from the stat of, well, Pittsburgh is at least, if anything, very consistent, and they don't see these deficits very much. These underdog statuses very much.
They've got a lot of respect in the betting community, but it seems like that has what's the word I'm looking for?
Subsided?
Yeah. Dissolved. That was the word I was looking for. Dissolved rapidly.
That's fair.
So with that being said, John, I got to get your prediction for the game on Sunday. I know Mr. Perez, big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, going to be disappointed in my predictions. But who you got on Sunday?
I'm going to say, given that we are at, I want to keep saying the Ralph because I don't know what it's called. The mark, the high mark, maybe, I don't know.
You know what? That's real quick. That's something that chaps my ass. Is how it's impossible. And this is probably for a more of a JC Money Show podcast, but or episode. But it blows my mind that people can't get health insurance. And that people that do get health insurance, it's god awful expensive, and it's still legal for health insurance companies to put their names on stadiums.
Yeah, we could save that for a TJCMS for sure.
Seems kind of ass backwards,
Right. Now that said, back to the prediction. I'm going to say, given everything that we've seen here and what we know about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their current identity, arguably in a bit of a transition right now, I'm going to say the Buffalo Bills are going to win by a score of 42-7. I don't see this as a very close game at all, to be perfectly honest.
I would agree with
and
that.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that to be funny. I can see Buffalo easily putting up 42 on them and resting Josh Allen by mid third quarter.
I mean, they beat the Bengals this year because of doink, 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 doink. Can't kick a field goal. Plus, also the Bengals are still actively trying to get Joe Burrow murdered. Picking up from the theme last year. Let's how quickly can we get Joe Burrow to Andrew Luck the Bengals?
Right, right.
He's been sacked like 700 times.
That poor guy.
But in losses, the Steelers have not scored more than 20 points. Granted. They lost to the Patriots, scored 14 points. The next week they lose to the Browns, they score 17 points. The week after they lose to the Jets, scored 20 points. So, just for the sake of trends, okay, I'm going to say the Bills win, but I'm going to say it'll be 35-21. Okay. And I only say 21 because the Steelers have a trend going, and I'm sticking with it.
All right.
They'll score one more point than their last loss. So they'll keep that cute little 14, 17, 20, 21. At some point, maybe they'll win. But at some point, you have to outscore the offense of the opposing team. Well, and I do not think, no matter what Kenny Pickett does this week.
Yeah.
Look at if the Bills lose to the Steelers, I don't know. Like,
hell, I mean, I'm looking at the Steelers schedule right now, and I genuinely cannot. They could possibly not win another game. I thought they would have beaten the Jets, to be honest with you.
I mean, they can probably beat the Saints because the Saints are kind of a weird anomaly of maybe, you don't know what you're going to get. Maybe the Colts because
okay, so you know what, they could possibly beat the Saints because it would be the Saints actually on November 13th going to Pittsburgh.
Yep,
and we know dome teams playing in colder weather stadiums that are outdoors tend to struggle a bit. So there's that.
Call me crazy, but I don't think that the Steelers get more than 7 wins this year.
Oh yeah,
even if Kenny, well, hear me out. Even if Kenny Pickett's good,
if I'm factoring in the Saints here, so let's see, Saints, the Bengals could be a maybe.
Well, hear me out. They're playing the Bills. They play the Bucks. They play the Dolphins. 3 losses. They play the Eagles. You're not beating the Eagles. They are the best team in football right now.
Right.
The Saints, again, depends on what the Saints are doing, but Jameis Winston, hot again, cool again. The Bengals, I can't imagine the Bengals are going to get swept by the Steelers this year. The Colts. Okay. Look at the Colts have not been good.
Yeah, right.
The Falcons have not been good. The Ravens, you might go 50-50 on one of these, and you say that
I would take the Ravens. I would take the Ravens on that one.
I'm going the Ravens. The Panthers, they'll probably beat the Panthers because they're just a disaster. The Raiders, who knows what the Raiders are going to be in December because who knows what the Raiders are now. The Ravens again, good luck, and then the Browns at the end. He who shall not be named is probably going to be the quarterback at that point in time.
Right.
The Browns will probably win. But again, it's a rebuilding year for the Steelers. Does Mike Tomlin stick around? I don't know. But I don't even know what Mike Tomlin's contract.
I don't think that should even be a worry for him. Honestly, if they were to can Mike Tomlin after this year, after going his entire career not having a losing season at all, then that says more about who's really running the Pittsburgh Steelers and how dumb they are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought he was going to walk after last year. I thought he was going to leave when Ben left.
If Mike Tomlin should be able to leave whenever he chooses to leave Pittsburgh, not being forced out.
Well, I think that might end up being the situation. Maybe they might say, "Hey, look, we've agreed to part ways."
Right, for sure.
But he owns the NFL record for most consecutive non-losing seasons to begin a coaching career at 15. So it might end this year.
Indeed. All right. Well, I'm sorry. I'm getting things across my desk to my staff.
And I was counting.
Here.
I was counting to make sure that they counted. That was I'm a dipshit. I was counting to make sure that they considered 8-8 a non-losing season, which it is a non-losing season. But again, at this point, it looks like a Bills victory on Sunday. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but John is at I am JC Money. I am Ryan Wolfe at Wolf BLTD. Kenny Pickett's got small hands. The Bills are going to feast on Sunday. And sorry to Mr. Perez and the Perez family for what the Bills are about to do to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
For trans folks, Perez is a Cowboys fan. His wife is a Steelers fan.
Yeah, I was going to say Mr. Perez and Mrs. Perez, whom she had a birthday, and I forgot to mention to her happy birthday, but Mrs. Perez, happy birthday. This is how we'll know, John, if Lewis listens to our podcast, is that he'll say to me, thanks for the belated birthday wishes for Mrs. Perez.
Indeed. We'll see. I'm supposed to see them actually right after this podcast airs. I am supposed to go see them, and
so just ask him and say, hey, did you listen to the podcast this week? And if he says yeah, be like, okay.
That's fair. Okay. Maybe I'll do that. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up, though.
Absolutely. Go have yourself a good Friday night. I'll do the same. Bills, Steelers, Sunday, October 8th, 1 p.m. at the Highmark Stadium in Buffalo.
Well done.
As always, we are Trust the Podcast.
You're not.
We will catch you same time, same place next week. As always, I'm Ryan Wolfe at Wolf BLTD, John at I am JC Money, and let's go Bills.
Small hands indeed.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.